Good morning, and welcome to Kincardine United Church and our digital service. Due to technical difficulties, we were unable to record this morning's service. We have re-recorded a short version for your viewing today. My name is Liz Dillman, and along with Luann Dudman and Krista Ritchie, we'll be leading worship this morning. It's good to be here with you as we continue to meet electronically. And welcome to those of you who will be watching this on YouTube and those of you who will watch this service next week on Rogers Cable. This morning's service is a celebration of the mission and service of Kincardine United Church within itself and within the community and the world. This year's Mission and Service Sunday highlights the work and needs of the Women's House serving Bruce and Grey County, located here in Kincardine. If you wish to make a donation through the church to the Women's House, please go to the church's website and use one of the several ways to donate there, or do an e-transfer to the church. Please make sure to indicate that the donation is for the Women's House. The land on which this building sits, the land that has been walked on, hunted on, and lived on for thousands of years.
It is the traditional land of the Saugeen Ojibwe people, and it is with humility and respect that we give thanks that we are here, in the space where we are in touch with the Creator who made it and who made us.
May our worship honor the relationships that are celebrated and invited here.
And may we always remember the story of this land, the people who live here, and the call to live with respect and thanksgiving.
But the most important announcement this morning is that Kincardine United Church is reopening. The council has approved a reopening plan with the Grey Bruce public health protocols in place for in-person worship to begin on September 26th, next Sunday, and for public access to the building to begin on October 12th, 2021. Worship services will continue to be live streamed on Sunday mornings, found on YouTube later in the day, and broadcast on local TV the week after. Protocols for returning to the church are available on the church's website.
Mission and Service Sunday is an opportunity for the Membership and Mission Committee to share with you the needs and the fulfillment of those needs in the community at home and abroad. The United Church of Canada Mission and Service Fund is our pathway to support aid missions in Canada and throughout the world. Our goal for donations to the United Church of Canada M&S Fund this year is $30,000. We are currently at $20,332. Kincardine United Church has always been generous and a caring congregation, making our committee's job both easy and rewarding. Just as you must look after yourself so that you can look outward, M&M cares for Kincardine United Church's membership and fosters community within. Potluck meals and coffee times, ice cream Sundays, pancake Tuesday are all enjoyed together. These social opportunities provide connection for all of us and welcome guests in an informal and personal way. The pandemic provided a challenge, and in response, we strive to connect through an extensive calling team, which includes the work of our previously established visiting team. Last year, we invited you to share in a digital presentation entitled, "What We've Been Doing During COVID." The pictures received from members of the congregation were put together into a slideshow and presented during service.
Networking locally with Cape Croker brings Christmas joy through White Gift Sunday. Gifts are delivered with a personal touch. The gifts sent to Cape Croker are placed out on tables in the community center, and members of their community are able to shop for Christmas gifts for family and friends. Last Mission Sunday, we made a connection with Chalmers Food Bank Garden, and in addition to the donated funds and rototiller, members of the Kincardine United Church also volunteered to grow seedlings for the 2021 crops. New ways of doing annual events have included live-streamed events such as the Violence Against Women Vigil and the Celebrating Diversity Service. Minute for Missions were pre-recorded from volunteers' homes, as well as the other content such as the piece on COVID from the Front Lines. As needs arise and are brought to our attention, we strive to show our caring and respond. Examples of this kind are coffee cards provided to the Canadian Mental Health Association, Kincardine, offering a change of scenery and an outing for the Dory group. Passes for Now Playing were provided for families of young children and who were struggling to find places to burn off energy in the cold weather. Assistance was provided for a family in crisis. Donations were made to the following publications or groups which will be familiar to many: the Friends of the Observer, Daily Bread Publication, Kincardine Ministerial Benevolent Fund, Canadian Food Grains Bank, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Silver Lake Camp, and the Grey Bruce Chaplaincy Services. The Affirming Committee and the Membership Adherent Review Team assist us with our duties and connect with us to share updates and answer our questions. Their work is important to our mandate and help our committee greatly by taking on these functions.
We value and recognize that human connection is vital to our well-being, so we encourage you to reach out to Membership and Mission if you have any suggestions for us or if you would like a call. Your Membership and Mission Committee includes Melinda Smeagol, Liz Dillman, Barrington Ursula Ports, Krista Ritchie, Luann Dudman, Charles Ludlow, and Gord Dunbar. If you've been listening and think that your talents align with our work, we'd be delighted to include you in our meetings. You are welcome to come as a guest or a potential committee member. We meet the third Tuesday of the month, currently via Zoom. It is our pleasure to serve Kincardine United Church, and we thank you for your support. Marissa Lair is the Public Education and Volunteer Coordinator for the Women's House serving Bruce and Gray. We thank her today for preparing this presentation for us, which we will now be sharing via Zoom.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm very excited to be here on behalf of Women's House serving Bruce and Gray. My name is Marissa. I am the Public Education and Volunteer Coordinator. Tonight, I just have a brief presentation for you. I'd really like to tell you about how the pandemic has affected violence against women, both locally and globally, as well as a few things that is happening at Women's House right now, some developments, some new programs, and public education initiatives. So I am going to share my screen. Just bear with me one moment, please. Okay, going to move Zoom out of the way. So hopefully you can see this presentation. So, whoop, here we go. Technical difficulties already. Okay, so to give you a quick overview, I'm sure you've spoken to us in the years prior, but I just wanted to recap our mission and vision. Our mission at Women's House is to provide a safe haven for victims or survivors, knowing that ending violence is a community responsibility. We will work towards ending violence through knowledge, which is power, in order to create change. Our vision is that we envision a world where women are empowered and women and children are safe, secure, and free from violence. So to give you a very brief introduction to gender-based violence, also known as domestic violence, it can kind of manifest in a few different ways. So it might look like abuse or violence that occurs between individuals related by affection, kinship, dependency, or trust, abuse of power and the betrayal of trust. It may cross all socioeconomic, religious, and ethnocultural barriers. It also affects all types of families, from traditional and non-traditional families. And the populations that are the most vulnerable include women, children, elderly, and persons with disabilities. Of course, we know that different gender-based violence may take place in the forms of physical, spiritual, psychological, financial manipulation, and it's not always easily recognizable, or it's something that we may see in our everyday lives, but we may not associate it as abuse or may not be able to support the individual. So we provide support through 3 different prevention tactics. The primary prevention tactic is education in schools and to public, which is a large part of my role, as well as the child witness counselors and the outreach counselors that operate in Gray and Bruce. So the goal is to stop violence before it starts and work towards equality for women and other vulnerable populations. This year with COVID, things are a little bit different, and our access in schools is looking a little bit different. So what we typically do is work one-on-one with children that come from homes where they experience abuse, and we do public education initiatives on what is violence, what does abuse look like. We have a new program on human trafficking, which we do hope to implement in schools, but until September rolls around, which I guess it is at the time that we're doing this presentation, so hopefully things are different. So the secondary prevention is the safe shelter and in-house programs. So responding to violence against women, keeping them safe, stopping violence from continuing and reoccurring. I will touch a little bit more about our programs and the specifics in a moment. So then the third way that we provide support is through our outreach programs, and that is with responding to violence against women, alleviating effects and preventing reoccurrence. It's This outreach is directly with survivors of abuse and violence, but it's also outreach with general community members such as yourselves, relatives, friends, family of survivors, and just making sure that all of us are equipped with this knowledge and understanding so that we can end violence together. So we do have quite a few services at Women's House. The one that we are probably best known for is our shelter service in Kincardine. So our shelter is currently full at capacity. There has been a huge demand for shelter services throughout the pandemic, and we have been operating at capacity for pretty much the duration. So unfortunately, admissions are very difficult to come by in our shelter and shelters across the board in Ontario at the moment. But what we do in shelter is we house women and their children under the age of 16 for up to 8 weeks, or extensions can be provided if need be. We also then, while they're in-house, provide transitional and housing support to try to help them obtain housing, rentals, another safe space to go to, things as such. While they're in the program, they also have access to free outreach counselors. We operate a 24/7 crisis line, which anyone can access. And then with our child witness program, excuse me, with our child witness program, as I mentioned briefly before, they are working with children within Grey and Bruce. Many of them are connected through the school systems, but we can be connected through them through community supports as well. Our outreach counselors are equipped to specifically support sexual assault cases or court support, things as such. The transitional housing and support primarily operates with women in shelter, though we do work with several different housing services locally, as well as community partners, to make sure that any woman experiencing housing needs is able to be supported. Prevention education is my program, and we're covering quite a few different sectors and themes at the moment, with one of our newest and I think very exciting programs is going to be male allyship. So I really want to bring in a more inclusive space for men or male identified people to have the language and skills required to not only support women experiencing gender-based violence, as it is predominantly women who experience it, but also be able to engage with their male peers and have conversations about what that looks like, conversations about consent, healthy boundaries, things as such, so that there's accountability for any male perpetrators. And then also we have a new human trafficking program, which I will briefly touch on again later in the presentation, but we're very excited. We just received funding for it this year, and we do know that human trafficking is on the rise in Grey Bruce, and it's becoming a little bit more obvious that there is some need for support. So we've been working with the OPP and other community supports in making sure that this education is available to the general public, but as well that there's safe supports in place for any survivors who are who have experienced human trafficking in the past. So as I mentioned earlier, we do cover all of Grey and Bruce. So our shelter itself is in Kincardine, but we also have second stage housing in Wyerton, Kincardine, and Port Elgin. These are housing services that we can refer out to following a shelter stay for a period of up to 1 year. We have our outreach counseling office located in Owen Sound, and then designated counselors to serve each county. And so overall, we serve approximately 8,600 square kilometers, which is excellent. So to dive a little bit further into statistics and kind of what the last year has brought, in our last fiscal year, we served 118 children, 541 women and received over 7,300 crisis calls or advocacy calls to our 24/7 hotline. I would like to show you a quick video. This woman is from UN Women. She's an expert in gender-based violence, and she frames it as how numbers are rising on a global scale, but this is also relevant to our local demographic as well. So we'll talk about what that looks like and then what we as individuals can do to support.
Before COVID hit, we know that violence against women is extremely common. It happens to 1 out of every 3 women in her lifetime. What we see unfolding right now is that domestic violence is really increasing because of all the strains related to safety, health, increased strains because of money worries and confined living conditions. So for some families, it's a really toxic mix of stress, of vulnerability. And we know that domestic violence is really about power and control, right, at the heart of it. And so people are trying to reassert that power and control. There's very frightening statistics coming out of countries worldwide. We're seeing, in some cases, tripling of cases, and those are staggering numbers. And so we're seeing women's rights activists, even government, flagging that this is a really serious problem. Service providers are having to be creative about how they get information to women. Women are having to be creative about how they seek support. In some places, women are going to pharmacies, right? The places people can go are grocery stores and pharmacies in most countries. And so they're setting up little pop-up crisis centers in grocery stores and in pharmacies to be able to respond to women's needs. Texts are becoming more and more important. So services are now reaching women in different ways through WhatsApp and through other types of, SMS messaging. And also neighbors and families are having to say, look, can I help? What we realize is really critical in this moment is making sure that women know which services are still working, because it's true that not all services are still working. And so we're working very closely with partners on the ground, frontline service providers, shelters, hotlines, police, health, all of these networks of supporters to identify who's still available and put that information right into the public view, and making sure that governments are not losing sight of this life-threatening issue, even during COVID, right? In a lot of countries, we're hearing that some women are going to hospitals or police stations and they're being told, not right now, please come back after COVID. And so we have to really be clear that we have to keep the focus on this issue right now, even during COVID. First, learn about domestic violence, understand what it is, understand some of the dynamics of violence that you might see unfolding in the lives of people that you know, and then understand what kind of supports people need when they're in that type of situation. If you see that violence is happening and someone's in danger, it's important to call the police. You can call the police, you can take action. And then finally, what I will add, if you want to show your support, you can donate your funds to support UN Women. You can support women's organizations like UN Women that are local. We partner with local organizations and frontline service providers like police, justice, health workers, social workers, and helplines across the world. And so we all have a role to play, right? It really is us being a village and supporting each other and communicating shared values at a moment like this.
Okay. Whoops. Next slide. So to recap, what the video was saying in terms of what's going on in action items. Unfortunately, during the COVID pandemic, we have seen a lack of access to supports. As I mentioned, our shelter has been at full capacity for the duration of the pandemic, and not all services are currently able to operate. The good news is in Gray and Bruce, both ourselves and the Women's Center in Owen Sound are operating, perhaps not at full capacity, but we are available. We are available 24/7 by phone through our crisis lines. And also we are still able to offer outreach counseling if we're not able to offer in shelter supports. So when we look at how isolation and lack of social support and lack of, even availability or transportation of social services has been throughout the last year and a half or so, it's really important that we as community members learn about gender-based violence. We try to recognize signs and symptoms or different dynamics that we might see in our everyday lives, and be that emotional support to survivors if we can be, if we have the capacity. If we don't, it's very important that we refer elsewhere. As she mentioned in the video, we call the police, or we provide them the Women's House crisis number, or we provide them the number to Victim Services Great Bruce. There's many things that we can do to take care of ourselves, while also making sure that the people around us are receiving the support they need if it is beyond our capabilities. So we can amplify local networks. If there's community groups for peer support, or your church organizations, anything that is really available to women in the community right now, it would be awesome if you could please amplify it, share it. Donating funds to support women's organizations is huge, so that professionals within the fields can lead change with supporting women. So these are kind of just the essentials. And if someone approaches you about gender-based violence, these are always the best places to start, but best places to direct folks, and requires very, very little of supporters. So I feel like I'm sorry I'm running through this so fast, but I have a lot that I'd like to share with you in our time today. So I wanted to let you know about a couple developments or news that's happening at Women's House right now, kind of outside of the discussion of gender-based violence, and more about like what our outreach committees and counselors are currently doing. We have an internal committee called the Anti-Racism, Anti-Oppression Committee, and it's an internal group of employees who are doing incredible work right now, facilitating conversations about how can we be more accessible and inclusive to marginalized populations within our community. So we've been talking about, we actually produced a land acknowledgement very recently. We did that in collaboration with our board of directors and Indigenous community members. We have been supporting different Black artists who are starting community projects within the Kincardine area. We have been bringing topics about accessibility to the forefront. So we very recently had a woman in shelter who was visually impaired, and we were the only shelter out of 8 different shelters she called that would admit her and accommodate her special needs. So that was a very big moment for us, and it really showed us how inaccessible shelters can be. So that's something that we're very much focused on right now, is the different intersections of accessibility and how Women's House can do better to support women. So we also, as I mentioned earlier, have new funding for a human trafficking counselor, and we're very excited to have this individual join our team. She will be working with youth in particular, which is a new aspect of our counseling department. And we also have a campaign rolling out right now Hopefully you have seen this on social media or within bars and restaurants local to Kincardine. So there is a poster on the right-hand side of the screen here, and it says, hashtag ask for Angela. Hi, I'm Angela. Are you on a date that isn't working out? Do you feel like you're not in a safe situation? Is your date not who they said they were online? Does it feel a bit weird? If you go to staff and ask for Angela, they will know you need help getting out of your situation. They will call you a taxi or help you leave discreetly without any fuss. And then on the bottom of the poster, it includes the Women's House crisis and business lines. So we're really excited about this campaign, particularly in Grey and Bruce, as we haven't seen it before. It's a global campaign, and the most likely spot you'll find this is on the back of women's or gender neutral bathrooms. And we are currently rolling it out to be in as many bars and restaurants in Grey Bruce as possible. Some other organizations that are outside of the restaurant industry have stepped up to say that they would include it in their establishments, which is excellent. So we really just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can within our community to be aware of gender-based violence, what that looks like, and also lend a hand to anyone who feels that they are either in an unsafe situation or it could escalate into an unsafe situation while they're out in public, and make sure that they're getting the support that they need. So if there is anyone in the room tonight who is connected to a bar or restaurant in the Kincardine or greater Bruce Grey area and would like to learn more about this campaign, get involved, and possibly put it in your establishment or the establishment of someone in your network, please get in touch with me. I would love to discuss this further. So in terms of getting connected with us, here is our crisis line, our outreach services, sexual assault support line, as well as the business lines to both the Kincardine and Owen Sound offices, excuse me. There's also our website. We recently launched onto TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, where you can find several videos on prevention education, learn more about human trafficking in our area, what you can do to prevent it, of course, prevention education on gender-based violence, and really an assortment of opportunities on how you can get involved as a volunteer, especially in our digital COVID world. So that is all from me this evening. I really appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, please get in touch with the facilitators from this evening. I would be most happy to pass along my phone number or email so that we can connect further.
Thank you, Marissa. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace, now and evermore. Amen.